Welcome back to Mac's Garage. As always, if you like what you see here today, hit the like, share, subscribe. That stuff helps me out, and I appreciate that. I don't know what the algorithm is doing nowadays, or when you'll be watching this, but if there's something better to do, go ahead and do that too. So I am standing here with my 1998 Dodge Ram 1500 four-wheel drive pickup. This truck is fresh from California at this point, and I drove it cross country with some real questionable steering parts. So today I'm going to be replacing all the steering parts in the front end. There's really four joint connections and then two adjusting sleeves. I'm going to try to reuse the two sleeves, but while I'm at it, I am going to change the style of steering on this truck. I have four Napa premium Napa chassis part numbers here. These have been some of the best suspension and steering parts I've used in quite some time, but unfortunately they are going the same way everybody else has, and that is cheap Chinese crap. So out of these four boxes, three of these three are still American-made parts. My guess is that by the time you watch this and order your own, there's a fair chance they will be from Taiwan, like this one over here. But I'll give you the four part numbers. Again, these are Napa chassis. And yeah, just one second here. So we'll start out over here with a 269-3208. Then we come over to the 269-3148. The biggest box here is the 269-6095. And the other larger box is a 269-6096. I will put those in the description of the video as well. What these parts actually fit would be a 1998 or 99 Ram 3500 with the HD steering option. So I'll get this truck up in the air and I will do a before shot, and then I'll do a real quick after shot so you can see what the difference is. I'll make the editing magic so those line up back to back, and then we'll go through the installation of these parts on this truck. Now, there are adjusting sleeves that go in between these pieces. They're not real expensive, but I'm going to try to reuse what's on this truck. So I don't even have the other ones here right now. And that is actually also kind of a display on what the crossover between these are. So they literally use the same size adjusting sleeves. The steering joints and the actual parts themselves are not that much different in strength. There is going to be what I consider to be a far superior steering geometry that comes out of this. Now, as for what this fits, and maybe I should have led with this, but here we are. This should work on any 1994 to 1999 Dodge four-wheel drive truck. That would be a 1500, 2500, or 3500. These parts should work on all of that range. In 2000, they changed the size of the joints. So from 2000 to either 01 in the 1500s or 02 in the 25 and 3500s, this will not work. These are the wrong parts for that. You can do a very similar thing, but this itself won't work. I haven't tried these with 16-inch wheels, so kind of do that at your own risk, but I believe this stuff should work under a stock 16-inch wheel. The upgrade for the 2000 to 2002, if you do that upgrade, the joints are significantly larger and you really need a 17-inch wheel plus on those. And I'm not going to do the part numbers and that. You can look that stuff up. I'm sure someone else has done a video on it. So with that said, let's get this truck up in the air and I'll start taking parts apart. With this truck up in the air, you can now see the factory design on most of these second gen Rams, and that is what is commonly referred to as a Y-link setup. This right here is your steering box. It moves side to side when you turn the steering wheel, which pushes on this, which would be a drag link. So you've got a joint here, adjuster sleeve. This adjuster sleeve centers the steering wheel. It comes down through and connects directly into the passenger side tire. So from there, we've got another joint here that connects on to this bar, which runs across to the driver's side tire. The issue with this style of setup, at least in my mind, is that as your suspension goes up and down, the relationship between these gets bigger or wider, which actually causes the tires to move in and out, and the toe changes as the suspension height changes. So as you're hitting bumps with this style of suspension, your tires are actually wiggling back and forth a little bit. At stock height, they're not bad. As you lift the truck, the angles here get greater, and there's actually a larger effect as you hit bumps with the lifted version of this truck. Another thing that I'll talk about here in a minute is back behind here, this currently new part, the only new part. This is the only part I was so afraid it was going to fall apart that I changed it before I left California with the truck. This is called a track bar. It locates the axle side to side under the truck. And actually, as this axle goes up and down, it goes side to side a little bit on the angle of this bar. That becomes a thing here later, and I will show you that with the other style of steering. So this again is your stock Y-link style steering. So this is the steering system you end up with. A lot of people online will call this a T-bar system. It has a solid bar from the passenger tire there over to the driver's tire over there, and there is one bar that goes between the two. So that means that as this truck goes down the road, the toe no longer changes whatsoever. The other side of that, and I don't have the exact measurements, but if you look, the tires are pretty well straight ahead right now. This bar is roughly that far away. If you come down over here, there's the mounting point and the mounting point there, and it is roughly the same. So you should get very little bump steer because this drag link here and your track bar in behind it are the same length. So as the suspension cycles, or very close to it, the steering doesn't really change in relationship to the track bar. So as the axle goes up and down, the steering stays very stable. So where you, honestly, on like your normal street driven half-ton or 3/4 ton or 1-ton pickup that you're not doing a lot of work with, if you have an all good everything steering system, I don't think I would bother doing this modification. However, if you have one like this truck where every joint on the system was already wore out, and the parts difference between doing a standard steering setup or going to this heavy duty style of steering is, I think it's probably about $120 difference. Obviously, I went ahead and did it. Now, where this really helps out is people with plows or people that load the front of the truck differently. Because now, as you put weight on it and the ride height of the truck changes pretty drastically going down the road depending on what you're doing, your toe stays the same, so your tires and stuff don't wear out. So this is just a better setup for, honestly, it's just a better setup in my opinion. Dodge actually went to this style of steering, I don't remember the exact year, I think 2007-ish. Don't quote me on the year, but all of the Dodge 25 and 3500, which are still solid axle trucks, went to this same style of steering. They also changed the front end suspension later, but they had a very similar suspension setup with a very similar steering setup on the newer pickups, and that's because it's better. So, yeah, that's it, I guess. Now we'll get on to doing the installation. Well, I guess removal first, then installation. But yeah, you get the idea. Oh, I guess one more thing before we get there. This bolt here is your steering stabilizer. You can very easily add a steering stabilizer to a point on this bar if you get the right brackets. I did not at this time. Honestly, we'll kind of see how it drives. If everything's good on the front end of this truck, I don't really know that it'll need one. Should drive fairly nice. So we'll see. But all right, that's it. I'm going to try to remove this steering system without taking the wheels off. It's got aftermarket wheels on. They're kind of a pain to deal with, and I think I can do it. If you're doing this at home on jack stands, probably go ahead and pop the wheels off. It'll be a lot easier. So we'll see how this works out. But the first things I'm going to do is I'm going to take the steering stabilizer mount off of here. And actually, I'm just going to discard this whole steering stabilizer. So I lied. I'm going to leave this on here. But if you have a good steering stabilizer, take this one off and hold on to it for later. But I'm just going to unbolt it here. My next step will be to take this bolt off here. I will pop it loose next, which will allow this to drop down. Then I'm going to, let's see, I will go for this side after that. I will drop it down. And then finally I'm going to drop that down, spread the tires out, and pull this whole assembly out as one piece. Yep, that's how it goes in my mind. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of set this up at a time lapse, and we'll see if it works that way or not. Let's go through a quick tool inventory of what I'm going to use here. I've got my air impact with a 21 millimeter socket. In this particular case, all of the fasteners on the original steering system are 21 millimeter. Yours may differ, but I've got that. Got a 21 millimeter open end wrench. If I was going to take the tires off, I would have pretty much no reason to think I actually need this. Pair of diagonal cutting pliers. That's for the cotter pins, cotter keys, whatever. I've got a pair of pickle forks. I generally don't really use these. If you're going to use these, that is the last time you'll have boots on whatever joint you're taking apart. They are ramped, and this particular one has been used on a joint that was a little wider than it, and it bent. So between these two, one of them should be the right size. Not sure if I'll use them on this truck or not, but they're there. And then my favorite hammer. So this is possibly my favorite tool that I own. If something happens to this and I can't get an exact replacement, I will be very disappointed. And there's not too many tools that I own that I can say that about, but I really like this. It's just a Blue Point 48 ounce mini sledge. So those are the tools I'll be using. Now I'm going to go ahead and speed this thing up. There's probably a couple other things too. I'll try to wrap those around. Like whatever size these adjuster sleeves are, I'll have to deal with that at some point. with that old stuff out of the way, one thing I noticed here almost immediately is that this is the driver's side. You can see that little shiny thing. That is an axle joint coming apart. So I'm gonna have to install a new axle joint in this side, which means all of this stuff out here has to come off: wheel bearing, brakes, everything. So not a huge deal, but it does take some time, and I don't have one with me today. That said, the old steering is out. Here it is on the floor. The new bar is sitting there next to it. I'm getting ready to remove those. One of the, well, I guess the change in 2000 and why this doesn't work is the size of these tapers changed. So for my measuring and what I can see, this will be fine in this 98, and it should be good for 94 to 99 with all 1500, 2500, and 3500s. That one is stiff and then loose. All right, but anyway, I'm going to continue to take this apart. I'll take the sleeves off, take this bracket off, and we'll start putting it back together. Okay, so here's these are kind of laid out the way they're going to go. This sleeve is not usable off the other truck. This is a 1 1/8 inch thread. I'll have the part number for that for you tomorrow. And by tomorrow, I mean in this video for you, but for me tomorrow. Now, as you are putting these together, these are opposite thread. Actually, they're the same thread, so that they thread in and out as they tighten down. So you want to make sure that you keep these relatively close to even as you tighten them up. So I have these started, they're within a thread, and I will just tighten those up as one unit. And I'll do the same for the other one, and the next video that you're gonna see is this stuff actually like going on the truck. It's been a little while since I did the video on the first part of this. Not super long, but a fair amount of stuff has happened in the shop since then. But this is still here. I have kind of jumped ahead, and I actually put the tie rod bar on. So I have the bar that runs from tire to tire now. The part number on that sleeve, in case you wanted that, was an ES3498S, and that is the lower end, the less expensive tie rod sleeve. Literally, as long as they got the threads in there and the metal is thick enough, I don't see a big difference on the sleeve itself, quality-wise, between the cheaper one and the more expensive one. These bars with the joints on them, that's a different story. I spent more money on the bars. I bought the cheaper adjuster sleeve. One, because I didn't really think I was going to have to. But anyway, back to this truck. For the first time in my life, I torqued a set of tie rod ends. So normally I just put them on and kind of run them down with an impact, and I've done enough of them that I have a pretty good feel for it. They're one of those things that tighter is kind of okay within reason, definitely can't be loose. And that's where we're at right now, and I'm holding a 22mm wrench because I now have one 22mm fastener on this steering system, and that's the Taiwanese outer tie rod. Now, if you look at this, and the lighting is going to be terrible, let me get a light out. If you look at this, castle nut and the hole that goes through it, this is properly torqued to 65 foot-pounds right now. This is a Taiwanese part, and guess what? It did not line up. Now, compared with our American part, this is also torqued to 65 foot-pounds, and the cotter pin, or the cotter pin just slipped right in there. So, when you're faced with this decision, you could back it off just a little bit and it would line up, but you never want to do that. Anytime you have one of these tapered fittings and it's kind of close, you always have to tighten it to the next notch, which I am not going to be able to do while I hold this phone, or not phone, camera, whatever. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to rotate this very carefully and slowly until I get this next notch in the castle nut. lined up with the hole in here. And that's why I kind of say that like going a little bit more is not necessarily the worst thing, because you have to sometimes. So let me do that and then we'll get back to the rest of this install. I have no idea if this bar is going to be close or not. The short end goes into the pitman arm and the other end goes into the tie rod. So we're just going to go ahead. The steering wheel is straight ahead because of the style of suspension this is. The steering wheel should not change very much as the suspension cycles up and down. So we should be able to get it pretty close when we install it here. So go ahead, drop that in. And this is actually kind of close right now. So I guessed at how much to install this. Stay. So I'm going to drop the upper end in first. Then I'm going to come back and I'm going to install this other end into the tie rod bar. Oh man, maybe. Okay. And again, I don't ever torque these, but we'll go ahead. Trying to set a good example on the used tube here. So we'll go ahead and torque this down. 65 foot-pounds again on these. Okay, there's that one. Okay, so neither one of those lined up. Cool. So we'll go ahead and switch from our torque wrench to just a big ratchet. We're going to go ahead and tighten these up a little bit more until they line up with the cotter pin hole. So that one's good there. Come down, this one's going to take a little bit more. Alright, so those are both good. Also, while we were waiting, I put the grease fittings in the parts. And, yep, so we'll go ahead and put those in. This is not a normal thing. Most people don't bend cotter pins over by hand. So use a piece of needle nose or a pair of needle nose or something like that. But I don't know, I guess I do enough of these that I usually just grab them and bend them like that. I don't really recommend it unless you do that a lot though. You will end up bleeding. So these are now tight. Now I've got both the tie rod ends tightened up. I have not tightened down the adjustment sleeve. I kind of eyeballed that already, but we're going to do a super rough, get it to an alignment shop alignment on this. So if you are looking at, like say this is the front of the wheel, this is the back of the wheel, my hands are the wheels. If you are talking about a toe-in situation, that means the front part of the wheels are closer and the back part of the wheels are farther apart. I can't do the other one with the way I'm standing, but the toe out is the exact opposite. The front of the wheels are wider than the back of the wheels. Now, when I haven't looked up specs for this truck, but I am guessing that a proper alignment has the front wheels just ever so slightly in, or honestly very close to straight ahead. When you are doing a very rough alignment, you want to kind of shoot for straight ahead, and if not, maybe a touch toed out. The reason why you want to go maybe a touch toed out is because if you go too far toed in, I could draw this out on paper and show you kind of why, but I'm just going to tell you. If you've got a vehicle that's towed in and it's towed in too far, it will drive like dog shit. Like, it is horrible. They're very twitchy. They're just horrible. They drive extremely bad, and you don't have to be that far off towed in for them to drive terrible. If you have them towed out slightly more than what they're supposed to be, they usually actually drive pretty dang nice. Now, if they are way out, on dry roads, you're still not going to have a problem. You get into like a snow and ice situation, if you're towed out or towed in, you're going to have problems. So this is going to just literally be get to an alignment shop. I'll stop talking and show you what I'm going to do. I'm going to take a rag, pick my lugs. So I'm going to choose this one and this one. You could take a paint marker if you wanted, but I'm going to grab my tire crayon and I am literally going to put a mark on each one of these lugs. The other thing that I'm going to do is kind of stand off to the side, and I am just going to put a mark on, that's not going to work, it doesn't matter. I'm really going to be eyeballing some stuff here. So I'm going to try to position this mark in a spot that I can get to it on both the front and the back, because you want to take your measurement at the same height. If you take one measurement here and the other one here, it exaggerates it. Honestly, if you're totally straight ahead, it shouldn't matter, but in reality, we're going to probably end up with it not perfectly straight ahead. So I'm going to make those marks. If you add a little more tread than these, you might use like a push pin, something like that. And this thing's too wide. A second person would be real helpful here. Let me see what I can come up with to hold the tape. I'm going to hold my hand on the steering box here so I can feel if this shaft is moving. Honestly, it is not. I need to shorten this up. Oh yeah, it's moving. What I'm going to do here, what I'm going to end up doing is I will adjust the steering wheel, and then I'll come down here and take a look at this, and I'll go back and forth to do that several times. Right now we are turned that way, so this is pretty close to straight. From there I will go ahead, I will lock these bolts down, which will take this adjustment out, and then I will grease the joints, and then I will drive it to an alignment shop. And I'm really not going to drive this truck until I get it aligned. Again, if you want to do this by yourself, you can make some measurements and get it quite close. With this T-bar, or not T, yeah, well, whatever. We'll call this a T-bar or a true tie rod style steering. As long as you have your toe set, you can adjust the steering wheel angle quite easily with just this. So this adjustment here is strictly for toe. This one here is strictly for steering wheel. Also steering box, how far straight ahead it is or whatever. But that's it. So I think that's it for this video. Yeah. I'm going to finish up this stuff. I'm going to grease it. I'm going to get the steering wheel fairly straight. And then we'll do the final shots here. Hopefully that helps you out if you want to update your 94 to 99 Ram pickup with a heavier duty steering option. I kind of already said it early on in the video, but if you have a totally functional, everything's good steering system, real debatable on if this is worth spending money on. The reason that this truck got this style of steering is every single joint was already wore out, so I could either replace it all with the factory stuff, or I could go to what I consider to be a far better designed steering system. And if you've got like one joint worn out, now it's kind of hard to decide, right? Whatever. It is what it is. There is other stuff on this truck that probably will have an impact on how it drives. Like the steering box has a little bit of play in it. Um, the correction for that is to replace it. Unfortunately, if you get like a parts store steering box, a lot of the times they're worse than what you'll take out that have a little bit of play in it. So I'm probably going to leave it alone for right now. Um, the ball joints are tight. The suspension bushings are all good. So all that stuff's pretty decent. We'll see what happens with this truck. I'm getting old, so I don't really want to lift things anymore. Some of you might understand that. It's getting to the point where climbing up into a truck, even though it looks cool, it's just gets old. Um, Honestly, the manual transmission's kind of like that. So I should probably lift this, put big tires on it, make it miserable to get in and out of, and less fun to drive in traffic. So I like driving a manual transmission unless it's stop and go traffic. So anyway, I guess that's probably enough rambling. Um, Thanks for watching. Hit the like, share, subscribe, and I'll see you later.